What happens when the guards aren't watching? In the chilling confines of a Minnesota prison, a grotesque scene unfolded one fateful morning. Jaime Osuna, a man with a dark past, shared a cell with Luis Romero. On March 9, 2019, guards found Romero's life brutally taken by his cellmate. The shock rippled through the corridors, revealing not just a murder, but a prelude to deeper darkness. Osuna, a convicted murderer, and Romero, nearing parole, their fates tragically intertwined. This gruesome discovery was just the beginning of a horrifying tale. 2 inmates, 1 cell, a recipe for disaster. In the eerie confines of a Minnesota state prison, Jaime Osuna and Luis Romero found themselves sharing a space that was far from harmonious. Osuna, a 31-year-old with a chilling history, was serving a life sentence for the brutal murder and torture of a woman in 2011. Known for his dark fascination with torture, Osuna had a reputation that preceded him, marked by a disturbing bravado during his trials and a self-proclaimed allegiance to Satanism. On the other side, Luis Romero, 44, was nearing the end of a 27-year sentence for a second-degree murder committed in his youth. Approaching parole eligibility, Romero's past was a stark contrast to Osuna's unrepentant and ongoing violence. The 2 men couldn't have been more different, with Romero seemingly looking toward a second chance at life, while Osuna delved deeper into his macabre interests. Locked together, the stage was set for a tragic event. Under the cover of night, a brutal crime unfolds. In the confined space of a cell in Corcoran, Minnesota, a chilling scene was set into motion by Jaime Osuna, a man with a harrowing past and a penchant for the macabre. With his cellmate Luis Romero, unsuspecting and vulnerable, Osuna, aged 31, embarked on a gruesome spree that would shake the very foundations of the American penal system. Using a blade affixed to a makeshift handle, Osuna began his horrific act. The precision of his movements suggested a premeditated intent as he systematically dismantled the physical essence of his 44-year-old cellmate. First, he severed the head with a series of calculated strokes, an act so barbaric yet executed with a disturbing calmness. As Romero's life ebbed away, Osuna did not cease. He gouged out an eye, removed a finger, and then, with grotesque curiosity, extracted a rib and a portion of lung. The air in the cell thickened with the iron scent of blood, a silent testament to the brutality unfolding within. But the horror did not end with these acts of mutilation. In a twisted display of dominance and derangement, Osuna crafted a necklace from the severed body parts. This macabre trophy hung around his neck, a stark and morbid symbol of his control and disregard for human life. Throughout this nightmarish ordeal, the prison guards remained oblivious. Routine checks were supposedly made, yet the white sheet that obscured the view into the cell was never questioned. It was a failure that would later haunt those corridors and prompt a cascade of inquiries and condemnations. As dawn broke, the true horror inside the cell would soon be revealed. The guards upon their morning rounds were met not just with the sight of a life brutally taken, but also with the chilling calm of a killer adorned with the evidence of his crime. The reality of what had occurred under their watch was as undeniable as it was horrifying. How did a murder of such brutality go unnoticed? This is the daunting question that looms over the chilling case of Jaime Osuna and Luis Romero. In a grim cell within the walls of a Minnesota prison, a scene of unspeakable horror unfolded, yet it remained hidden from the eyes of those meant to prevent such atrocities. The aftermath of this brutal act saw Luis Romero's family seeking justice and accountability. They filed a lawsuit against the prison authorities, accusing them of gross negligence. The lawsuit highlighted several systemic failures, including the alarming fact that the cell bars were obscured by a white sheet. This critical detail suggests that the routine checks, which should be thorough and regular, were anything but. Further digging into the operations of the prison revealed a disturbing pattern of superficial cell inspections by the guards. Reports and testimonies suggest that had these checks been performed diligently, the signs of distress and the ensuing violence might have been detected much earlier. The oversight was not just a momentary lapse. It was indicative of a broader, more systemic issue within the prison's security protocols. The covered cell bars are not just a detail of the case. They symbolize the opaque nature of the oversight that allowed such a heinous act to occur right under the watchful eyes of law enforcement. This chilling oversight begs a broader question about the effectiveness of prison security systems as a whole. Questions arose about the effectiveness of prison oversight. In the wake of tragedy, the quest for truth begins. The aftermath of the brutal murder within the walls of a Minnesota state prison set off a cascade of investigations, each peeling back layers of a deeply flawed system. The Office of the Inspector General spearheaded the initial inquiry, revealing a chilling disregard for standard operating procedures by the prison staff. Their report painted a grim picture of negligence that allowed Jaime Osuna, a self-proclaimed Satan worshipper with a gruesome history, to carry out a nightmarish act of violence against his cellmate, Romero. The crux of the investigation focused on the timeline leading up to the discovery of the crime. According to the Inspector General, prison guards had reported both inmates alive during their routine checks, yet somehow missed the escalating violence just beyond the cell bars, obscured by nothing more than a white sheet. This critical oversight, the report suggests, could have been the difference between life and death. Contradictory to the grim findings of the Inspector General, the California Department of Corrections presented a defensive stance. They argued that the investigation was both thorough and complete from the start, challenging the notion of negligence. Their report, however, was met with skepticism, especially by those advocating for justice for Romero. Adding another layer of complexity, Osuna's psychological state was brought to the forefront. Diagnosed with a cocktail of mental health issues including schizophrenia and multiple personality disorders, his fitness to stand trial came under scrutiny. This led to a suspension of criminal proceedings until his mental competency could be confirmed, further complicating the pursuit of justice. As the investigations unfolded, each report added to a mosaic of systemic failures and missed opportunities. The Romero family, represented by attorney Justin Sterling, criticized the veil of secrecy that seemed to shroud the department's actions, emphasizing the preventable nature of this tragedy. The battle between seeking justice and bureaucratic secrecy intensified, leaving more questions than answers in the quest to understand how such a horror could have occurred unnoticed. A single crime, widespread repercussions. The brutal murder within the confines of a prison cell not only shocked the nation, but also ignited a fierce debate about the adequacy of prison policies and the training of staff. The case of Jaime Osuna's gruesome act against his cellmate Romero highlighted critical lapses in the system that are too perilous to ignore. In the wake of the incident, there was a public outcry demanding more stringent oversight and improved safety protocols in prisons. Media outlets were ablaze with discussions and analyses, each unpacking the layers of neglect that allowed such a horrifying crime to occur. This was not just a story of a murder. It was a glaring spotlight on the systemic failures within the penal system. The response from prison authorities was to review and supposedly strengthen their inspection routines. Training modules were revised to include more comprehensive checks, aiming to ensure that something as horrific as the events in Corcoran could never happen again. But the question remains, are these measures enough? This case also stirred a broader conversation about the mental health support provided to inmates. Osuna's history of mental illness and violence was well documented, yet the system failed to prevent him from harming others. It raises a critical question about how prisons are dealing with inmates who suffer from severe psychological issues. The echoes of this tragedy continue to reverberate. The incident at Corcoran has become a case study in what can go disastrously wrong when warning signs are overlooked and calls for reform are ignored. It serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of complacency and the perpetual need for vigilance and improvement in the management of prison systems. Looking back at the darkness to find light. In the shadow of such a chilling narrative, it's crucial to revisit the events that unfolded within the walls of a Minnesota prison. Jaime Osuna, a man with a dark past and a penchant for brutality, committed an atrocity that shook the very foundations of prison management and inmate safety. His cellmate, Romero, suffered a fate that was both horrific and preventable, revealing systemic failures at multiple levels. The details of this case are not just a recount of a gruesome act, but a stark reminder of the consequences of oversight and negligence. Reports indicated that despite routine checks claimed by the guards, a brutal crime unfolded undetected, culminating in a scene that one would only expect in a nightmare. This incident has sparked major investigations and a re-evaluation of prison protocols. The outcry led to discussions about the necessity for more rigorous checks, better mental health assessments, and a transparent system that holds all levels of authority accountable. It's a call to ensure that what happened to Romero does not happen again. In reflecting on these events, the importance of vigilance and accountability in correctional facilities cannot be overstressed. It's about preventing the preventable, recognizing the signs of distress and potential danger, and acting swiftly and effectively to mitigate risks. May we learn, may we never forget, and may we strive to prevent the preventable. As we close this discussion, remember to engage with us in the comments below. Share your thoughts, subscribe for more insightful content, and don't forget to explore other videos on our channel that shed light on critical issues like this one. Together, let's ensure that awareness and dialogue lead to action and change.